Hello, dear ones. Hello, family. You're at home. You're at home with Jim and Joy. We want you to be a part of the show. We want to hear from you. We're speaking life, marriage, the family. 205-271-2980 or 800-221-9460. And happy graduation to all graduates out there. And Joy, we've been busy with graduations, haven't we, in our family?
We have in May. May's a busy time. We've had 2 grandchildren graduate kindergarten, 1 graduate 8th grade. And just this morning we were at one of the kindergarten graduations. The other 2 were in Huntsville and we couldn't make it there.
And tonight we're going to our nephew's graduation. I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. There's confirmation, there's graduation. Yeah. There's just a lot going on in the month of May. And a lot of weddings. People get married in May. So May can be a little bit of an expensive month. You know, you're just like, okay, we got to write them a check, and you got to write them a check. But it's a good thing because you're supporting such a great passage for them, which is so beautiful.
It's important for people to be present. If you can be present at the graduates' graduation, or give a phone call, be there. It means so much to them. When we were growing up, we didn't have kindergarten graduations.
No, we didn't.
I'm kind of like kindergarten graduation. But little Jude Matthias graduated, so our grandson's graduating, so you got to be there. And it was so meaningful. And he graduated kindergarten from a Catholic school here in town. And to see those little kids, were they 5 years old?
Yeah,
6
5
years
and
old?
6, yeah.
All there, so beautiful. And I was just so proud of the principal,
who was our son-in-law.
Our son-in-law. But he got up and led a prayer, and I remember that he said, "Dear Lord, we thank you for the gift of life and for family, you know, for children." And I thought, wow, what a context to be in for education. And just to see each one of those little children get up when they got their diploma. And I tell you what, they knew how to shake hands. They went right up there, they shook the hand, they looked them in the eye.
Got their diploma.
It was just so meaningful, wasn't it?
It was really precious. And then they did the year in a rap, which was so good, which was so special.
And they sang in Spanish as well as English, and it meant so much.
It really was good. And then last week we were in Canada, so we were up in Ottawa covering March for Life, and that was rather spectacular.
So impressed with the people of Canada. I mean, they're up against it on both ends of life. They struck down the criminalization of assisted suicides, and then they've got assisted suicide. They have no abortion law, so they're just killing up to 9 months. But the Christian community, Catholic community, the bishops there are rising up for the occasion. Very articulate spokespersons, as the Cardinal says there, Cardinal Collins. We must speak with clarity and with charity.
Right.
And we're going to have a special guest today in Sherif Girgis. And he's one that speaks with clarity and with charity regarding marriage, what it is, a man and a woman. He makes a great defense for marriage, so it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful show. And we want to say a word regarding Memorial Day weekend. And to give thanks, make sure you pause, especially we're having family and everybody's there. When we have holidays, I always say to our kids and grandkids, do you know why you're off from school? Especially Memorial Day. Giving thanks for those who pay the ultimate price and for the families that have sacrificed so much. So let's remember those who pay the ultimate price and for all of our veterans. We're heading to a break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by our guest, Sherif Girgis, one of the most eloquent spokespersons, not only in America, but in the world. 205-271-2980, 800-221-9460. We want to hear from you. We're building a marriage and family culture. We'll be right back. You're at home with Jim and Joy. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, you are at home with Jim and Joy, and now we're in our living room and we have our wonderful guest, Sherif Girgis, and he is an author, a speaker. He's a very bright young man, and he has authored a book called What is Marriage? Man and Woman, a Defense. But before we get to that great topic that we're going to talk and you're going to give great defense about, why don't you tell us about where does this passion come from to talk about the defense of marriage in this time and in our culture, and also share with our viewing audience the importance of EWTN in your life as a young man and your journey into the Catholic Church and your conversion?
Absolutely. Well, first I want to say thanks for having me in your home.
Yes.
I'm comfortable already.
Good, good. Coffee's good.
That's right. It's not bad. It's better than Starbucks. Actually, the two things are connected. I'll start with the second one. I was not practicing any kind of faith at all. My family wasn't when I was pretty young. And it was through EWTN that I first had a kind of moral conversion. And that got me really interested in learning more. And of course, when you first get the truth, you want to share it with everybody. That's the first instinct, especially people you care about. And there were some things that I knew you could only really share with people who accepted the authority of the church and the authority of the Gospels. But I knew there was a lot, especially in the moral issues, that you could share even if they didn't. Because by the church's own lights, these aren't just the special property of Catholics. These are ideas that have roots in human reason, in the reason that St. Paul says is written on, in the law that's written on our hearts. And I wanted to be able to share that. And that actually got me into philosophy and into rational arguments. It's what I studied. So I converted to Catholicism through the reading at the beginning that I learned from EWTN. And then I developed a general interest in philosophy in particular. And I saw that on the marriage debate, it just wasn't a healthy debate. I mean, it was one of these things where one side says, we're on the side of reason and enlightenment and American pie, and if you're against us, you just hate people. And that wasn't it at all. I knew that people who had traditional or conservative instincts on this thing had something on their side. There was a truth in what they were saying, and they were having a hard time articulating it. And that if you drew on the resources of our long intellectual tradition, you could bring that out, and you could show the difficulties in the side that was just supposed to be reason and truth and enlightenment.
Well, what a great blessing to have you on, and it's just very encouraging for us. And I didn't know your story with EWTN and being touched through the evangelistic work of Mother Angelica and of this network. And hopefully today there'll be many people through your witness that will be touched and that will have a moral transformation, spiritual transformation. As you were sharing, I don't know quite what you said, but you were talking about, you're being confronted with the truth, the Catholic tradition, and embracing that, but that there was something even beyond that in terms of just the rational ability to understand that could be articulated. And it seems like in your book and in your essay, I guess it went to the Harvard Law Review, the essay did, and then it's been bantered about all over. You're a Rhodes Scholar, Oxford. So you make your case not so much on Christian Catholic principles, but you're saying this is something that can be rationally understood. Why do you make your case that way?
Sure. Well, I think it's not because I don't think it's legitimate to use religious arguments in the public sphere. I say it's all comers. Let everybody make the arguments they want to make, and we'll see what the best view is. It's mainly for a couple of other reasons. One is that a lot of times people, when they hear the religious argument made, think it's the only one out there, and they that even distorts their understanding of the religious part of it. They think it's just an arbitrary set of rules. God picked out of a hat, he could have picked any other, and now he's imposing it on us. Rather than understanding that it's really a law of love. It's what's good for us. It corresponds to our nature, to what's good for human beings to live together and in community and really flourish. And you can use reason to pick out that part of it, to show why it's not just God's law, but it's wise. It makes sense. It has good results.
Yeah. It's good for human beings to live together. That's what the other side's saying too. How do you uniquely speak to the human beings that should be living together in fullness versus we're human beings, we're two guys, two women, several people, we love one another, we're emotionally connected here. How dare you say your love is superior to our love, and isn't it all about our commitment to one another?
Yeah, well, that's definitely a key question in this debate. One thing you have to get clear on is that love and community in themselves are valuable. This isn't about are you for or against love. The whole point is that there are different types, different forms of love. And the question is, what's distinctive about marital love? And you can approach it really from two angles. We can start from the public. angle. Like, what's the state's interest in this thing at all? And I think from that perspective, if you look across history, it's unbelievable if you think about it, that despite all the cultural variations, you have this one constant across time and space, which is that every society that's lived long enough to leave us a trace of itself has had some kind of institution meant to link men to women as fathers and mothers to any children they might have.
Is that what marriage is?
Is that what marriage is, right?
I think, yeah, from the political view,
Okay.
that's what marriage is about. That's why we have a marriage law, whereas we don't have a friendship law. Friendship is valuable.
Right.
Companionship in other forms is valuable. We don't have laws to regulate them. You can't sue someone for betraying you as a friend. Why is that?
So you make the connection, if I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Marriage is man and woman, and it's oriented to family, children. That's the key.
Exactly, and the main interest that the public has in it is making sure that wherever possible, kids grow up with the love and attention of the man and woman whose union gave them life.
Right.
That's the interest we're trying to protect. That doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen spontaneously. It takes a lot of really hard work, as you can tell me better than I can,
Yeah.
by experience. It takes a hard work to keep a man and a woman together for life for the sake of their family. And part of that work, not the whole thing, but part of it is cultural. It's cultural support for that ideal. And marriage law provides that. It's a way of everyone in society encouraging a man and a woman to stick together for the long haul, for their
Yeah.
family.
Why is it so important for children that they need their birth mother and birth father?
Sure. Well, there's lots of different ways to approach it. So a lot of the discussion centers on social science. And the truth is that the data on same-sex versus opposite-sex partnerships in terms of parenting is pretty new. We can say more about that later. But for 40 years, we've had a big experiment as a society in other forms of parenting. Single parenting and divorce and remarriage, step parenting, joint custody after a divorce. And every single time, whether you look at health indicators, emotional health, graduation rates, literacy, you name it, kids do better off, on average, with their married mom and dad. Why is that? It's for a couple reasons. One is that biological connection makes a difference.
Right.
Kin altruism, the sociologists have a word for it. It's the special connection, the special investment, and it makes sense because we're not just spirits, ghosts
Right.
in a machine.
Right.
We're embodied beings. So bodily connection, biological connection matters. Another reason is that a mom and a dad, on average, tend to bring different gifts to parenting, and we all kind of experience this in our own lives. We don't want to say it's a rigid division where a man can't be nourishing, where a woman can't be strong and firm. Of course, that's really simplistic. Nevertheless, in experience and in social science, you see there are differences. When kids grow up without a dad, the males are much more likely to be aggressive and to be in jail when they grow up. Women are much more likely to seek out the respect of a man in other forms,
Right.
to have early or teen pregnancy, and to have all the difficulties that comes with. So this
Right.
makes a difference to real people's lives.
Right, and then it makes a difference to our society, because then as our society fails, and we have to pick up all the pieces for that.
Exactly.
And so we're having to repair all of that damage. And I have friends who are from divorced parents, and it gets really complicated at Christmas time and holidays and graduations and all the things that you do that are the normal things of life. It just gets complicated.
Absolutely. I mean, the family, the marriage-based family, is the best department of health and education and welfare. And when it's not there to do that job, we all, as a society, have to foot the bill. And we have to do that. That's an obligation we have, and we welcome that obligation where it arises. So we want to do what we can to help children in difficult situations. And we know that, look, this isn't a slight against people who do end up as single parents.
Right.
They're often heroic.
Right.
But we pay them a compliment. We recognize their heroism when we say that the ideal, the easiest way to do this is with a married mom and dad.
Right, and even the other day I was with one of our clients who was a single mom, and she had a couple of kids out of wedlock, and I said, you are doing the hardest job on the planet. And she kind of like lived her life in a crisis anyway, so she wasn't kind of receiving what I was saying. And then I just said, don't you want help sometimes? don't you just wear out and you wish you had a backup? And she goes, yeah, like that would be nice. You know, but just the reality of that, because maybe she was raised by a single mom, so she grew up in that, and that was a crisis mode. And so if you don't know the great value of a husband and a wife and a mother and a father and all of that support, because, you know, we're married 37 years, we have 4 kids, and it gets complicated. It gets really complicated sometimes. And there is suffering, but we're together because we say to each other, you're irreplaceable, you're permanent. Divorce is not an option because there are days in and of your flesh you want to go, oh, I am so out of here.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Not with you, but
This could get awkward.
no, it's kind of like you know, you just go with the kids. It's like what, you know, and you just want to walk out the door, you know, and think somebody else is going to come and do this job.
And that's where culture makes a difference,
right?
Because culture is part of what decides what's on the table for you or not.
Right.
People. You know, you can look at the example of no-fault divorce, for example. When that was first proposed, and it was a state-by-state thing, but there were about 15 years where it kind of swept the country. When it was first proposed, people were like, how is it going to affect you or your marriage?
Right.
If you're in a high-conflict marriage, this is just going to make it easier for you to do what you would have done anyway. And if you're in a low-conflict marriage, it's not going to affect you. But now the social science is absolutely clear. It did way more than just lower the barriers to exit. It actually made people more likely to keep their eyes on the exit ramp. And that makes them more likely to take it.
Well, that is so true. Well, we have an email question. I often hear people say that the discussion is over on same-sex marriage and that the gay agenda has already won. Is that true? And this is from James.
Well, look, so sometimes people say this in connection to the Supreme Court decision that's coming up by the end of June. And whichever way that goes, this discussion isn't over for a couple reasons. One is that a Supreme Court decision isn't permanent as people think it is.
Right.
I mean, look at Roe v. Wade. That has had a long run, obviously, for over 40 years. But there are other decisions that have been overturned, and there is a powerful cultural push to overturn it. That's a real possibility. The second reason is that this isn't just about the same-sex marriage debate. Nobody got into this debate because they were like, wow, everything was going well until yesterday. But now this.
Right.
The main reason to be interested in the debate about whether to redefine marriage at all is because it'll make it either harder or easier to regain a foothold in the culture to rebuild other aspects of marriage. The ideal of permanence, the ideal of exclusivity, the ideal of getting married before you have kids, and all the rest of it. So it's really one piece of a much broader puzzle. And whether or not, you know, this part or that one goes in a certain direction for the next 10 years or the next 30 years, the fight overall for a healthy marriage culture has to go on.
That's important because I've been thinking, you know, the decision's coming in June. So it might be more federalized, or it might, you know, say the states can decide what marriage is going to look like, or federalize, and how do we respond to this? So how should we respond? Because it doesn't matter, it matters, but either way, we have to be about the reality of what marriage is and what marriage does and make up our own minds that we're about it, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, so one thing is that our obligation to witness to the truth doesn't get a judicial veto. So if the court says one thing, that still leaves us free to say another. But that's closely related to a second thing, which is that if the court does require same-sex marriage recognition across the board, one thing that'll come up, and that you've already started to see, is the push for the freedom to still have our views and say them out loud and act on them in the public square as a baker, as a florist, as a school teacher, whatever. So we need to continue to witness to the truth and love. We also need to fight legally and on the policy front for people called to those for the freedom to have those views.
Right. Okay, we have another email question. My husband, a Catholic, thinks that same-sex marriage exists as a civil union, so long it does not infringe upon our rights as Christians. He says there can be civil gay marriages, even if they're not recognized as religious ceremonies or sacraments. I think there's no way that could possibly happen, especially if churches face similar penalties as photographers and bakers who get penalized or shut down for not compromising their religious values. Can Catholics believe in civil unions for same-sex couples, or is that a slippery slope? And this is Gina from Maryland.
Good. So there's a couple questions in there. One is about civil unions versus civil marriage. So there have been some states and some countries that have civil unions for same-sex relationships for a while. In not a single case was that a stable solution, not one. It's always a stepping stone to the broader social goal, which is to say there's no difference at all between opposite and same-sex relationships and the common good. That's the one thing, it is unstable. On the second question, which was really, can't we just separate the sacrament from the civil institution? And that would be perfectly fine if marriage were like baptism.
That's right.
Just a spiritual reality, but it isn't. The reason it existed way before Christianity came on the scene, and in non-Christian cultures, the reason Gandhi has basically the same views as Pope John Paul II on sex and marriage, is that it's a human institution, and it serves real human goods. Whether or not a kid is baptized, he or she needs their own married mom and dad in a stable bond, and that's what this is about. We're leaving aside the least of our brothers and sisters, children, and their formation, if we don't fight for their right, wherever possible, to have that connection.
And you know, the important thing, the Supreme Court will probably rule on the last Friday in July, right before the 4th
That's right, and then
for
they'll
June,
just head out.
right before the 4th of July weekend, which is normally what they do. And if they do, make that ruling, it doesn't change the church's response like it did with abortion.
Right.
Life is sacred. Marriage is sacred. Marriage is a sacrament. It doesn't change it. And so we then, as the body of Christ, we need to reestablish the rules, fight for the rules. We don't go, well, so there goes the culture, and there we go, and go down that slippery slope and say, whatever the Supreme Court rules and wants, because the Supreme Court is not our ruler, It's God is our ruler.
Absolutely, and the Supreme Court doesn't change what's actually good and bad for people. And one thing we want to say about this debate is that the reason redefining marriage is bad for the common good is because it changes what people think marriage is.
Right.
And it changes it in a direction that will undermine the stabilizing principles of marriage, of permanence and exclusivity and monogamy, that we get all the public goods out of. It's really encouraging a view of marriage as a kind of emotional companionship. And we've already seen that was basically the view that was beginning to be built with no-fault divorce. And what are the consequences of that view? Well, there's no reason for permanence. The emotional union runs out, then we're just friends.
Then it's
gone back. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. It's nobody's fault.
Right.
There's no real reason for exclusivity. Why limit yourself to one person in terms of intimacy when it's really just about what personally fulfills you?
Right.
And we've seen proponents of same-sex marriage saying the same thing. Dan Savage, big New York Times profile on him a couple of years ago where he says, look, the great thing about same-sex marriage is it'll teach everybody to give up on these patriarchal norms, these traditional hang-ups like permanence and exclusivity.
Yeah. Okay, we have a phone call. And this is Teresa from New Hampshire. Teresa, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy, and your question or your comment for Sherif.
I kind of have a comment and a question. I am a married woman, Catholic, and I was blessed with one child, a 16-year-old boy, and I was just saying that I'd like you guys to join in with me in really praying for some heroic children to come up in our society, because no matter how much we try to filter what we watch or, have open, regular discussions with our son, there's always that character in the background, or that where it's almost indoctrinated into everything that they see, the transgender and the same-sex marriage. And so our children don't have a frame of reference where they can go back to a time when I remember when, and this was the norm. It's like this is their norm. And, I say to my son, I'm frightened for you and your generation and what you're growing up in, because it's almost like this is it, this is normal, accept it, and you're going to have to fight and claw your way.
You want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, I think that really speaks to the point that we need to create our own culture to the extent that we can. I mean, the first duty in all of this stuff is to live by our principles ourselves, right? I mean, it's one thing to make rational arguments, and I obviously think that's important. It's part of my day job, but it's not the whole picture. You need to be able to bring your kids, their friends, into a home with a married mom and dad, with kids, with a flourishing, bustling household where people single people, for whatever reason, are welcomed. They're grafted onto the vine, right? I think this is a kind of witness that can really only be told in real life. And that's a really important part of fighting the other cultural messages that you're right, you can't totally avoid, but you can counteract them with real flesh and blood example.
Yeah, she's really addressing a period of time where there was a commonality in terms of schools and even media and so on, where everybody was agreed on life and marriage to some degree. And so now that's collapsing and we're almost being indoctrinated. But this brings out what's always been true in the Catholic Church. It teaches you are the first and the ultimate educator of our children and of our grandchildren. And so we've got to build that culture of life in our own family. We need to know what we believe. Our kids need to see us living what we believe and inviting other people into our culture, into our marriage and family culture.
Well, it's so important. How does, in your defending marriage, how does that work out in your own personal marriage, in your marriage defense as you're out there? How does it work out at home with Sherif?
That's a delicate question. I like to say that my wife has started to teach me what marriage really is.
That was a good answer.
Yep, I hope she's watching. She probably has better things to do, actually, than watch her husband rattle on. Well, look, I think one thing it does is it keeps you honest, because I was talking earlier about the political understanding of what marriage is, but we also try to talk here about the moral, the personal, the direct, from the ground up. What is it for a couple entering into it? How should they think about this?
Right.
And the language we try to use is, well, we talk about it as a comprehensive union, a total self-gift is how John Paul would put it. And we talk a little bit about, and we can talk about that later, about why in particular this idea requires a man and a woman, plus a bunch of other conditions.
So
but
a comprehensive view of marriage versus what?
Well, we call it in the book a kind of revisionist view of marriage. And the revisionist view isn't about gay or straight, opposite or same sex. It's really about whether you understand it as a total self-gift or as a kind of romantic companionship, basically, and a romantic emotional union. And what are the differences? Well, the romantic emotional union says it's your best friends, plus you have a certain kind of affection or attachment for each other, a certain kind of feeling that colors the whole thing, which is romance. And like we said, that can't explain why you should commit to permanence as opposed to being together for as long as love lasts. Can't explain why it has to be two people. 3 people can have an emotional union. There are profiles of 3 men, for example, who live together, share all the burdens and benefits of common life.
And they call them a throuple?
Throuple is the indelicate word that they use for it. Look, and they'll say, we've made a commitment to each other. We don't want to be stigmatized. We don't want our kids stigmatized. We want to all be on the deed and the tax return. Why not marriage equality for us?
Right.
So it can't explain 2, can't explain permanent, and for that reason, it can't motivate people to live by those demanding norms of permanence, exclusivity. So the more this idea of marriage takes hold, and the law is going to teach it if we redefine marriage, the harder it'll be to get that stability for the sake of family life. The other side of it is a comprehensive union. What does that mean? It means a union of heart, mind, and body, the whole person, total self-gift. It means total for life. So it's permanent and it's exclusive. It's the maximum kind of commitment. And it means total or comprehensive in what it points to. It doesn't point to just this set of shared activities or those. It points to whole new human beings, new participants in every activity. That's why it calls for the demanding family life that it does. And only a male-female relationship is one in which the very act that makes marital love is also the kind of act that makes new life. Only that kind of relationship can give every kid a shot at being reared by his own mom and dad. Only that kind can have a one-flesh union, where you're really working together as one body towards a single goal, which is bringing new life into the world. You can have a metaphorical kind of close bond in other relationships, and you can have emotional companionship in other forms, and that stuff is valuable as far as it goes, but it's not a one-flesh union. It doesn't have 2 bodies working together towards a single bodily end, which is making new people.
What a revelation.
Right?
That's right.
It's so simple, too, but it's quite a revelation into the culture that we're in.
But it needs to be retold and retold and retold,
But people
right?
haven't even, I think the common people who aren't in Oxford and Princeton, or those that you're debating at Harvard, they haven't heard this. Maybe the others haven't heard it either. When you do, it's kind of like, that seems to make sense. And it's not even necessarily religious.
That's right, yeah. So the two become one in a way that the parts of a single person are one, right? It all works together towards a single end of the whole. And in the case of a couple, the reproduction of them as a couple. And that's an idea, yeah, you get one flesh union in Genesis. But the remarkable thing that we try to bring out in the book is you get it in the thought of folks like Aristotle and so on, who had no connection to Judaism or Christianity. St. Paul never wrote a letter to their hometown. They never touched a Baltimore catechism. They lobbed onto the same basic idea. It's because it's in human reason, too.
And because it's true and right. We have Tim from Wisconsin. Tim, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy, and your question or your comment for Sherif.
My comment is that as Catholics, how could we even support civil unions? Because it's still a sinful act, and the salvation of a person's soul should be foremost in our minds.
Yeah. So how can we even support this as Catholic people? There are so many Catholics who claim Catholicism who are just taking the position, well, these people love one another and they're committed to each other, therefore we can do this, or a civil union of some kind. They separate it from the sacrament, and it's not a small number of people who are Christian, who are Catholic, that are not understanding this or folding on it. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think the civil unions thing is supposed to be a kind of compromise. It's like, well, we don't want to upset people. Look, there are needs that arise where people live together, so let's just meet them with this other thing and we'll call it something else. I think there are two problems with that. One is that it doesn't work in practice. You're still saying we want specifically sexual relationships of a certain kind to get singled out, and that's already making it kind of on as sort of the same thing as marriage. And that's precisely the problem, is when you say that marriage is changing, when you change the idea of what a marriage is. That's where the difficulties come in. The second problem is that if we're really serious about, look, wherever people live together, there are certain needs, then why are we limiting it to sexual relationships in the first place? What about, a widow and her sister who moves in to help her with all the chores and the difficulties of a family life? What about two brothers who never stop living together and they want the hospital visitation and they want the inheritance rights and so on? So if there were really just practical needs on the ground that we needed to meet where people live together, we should meet them where people live together. We shouldn't redefine marriage with or without the label to do it. Wouldn't have to be sexual relationships only.
Well, one thing I learned about marriage after 37 years is you're all in. I mean, it's 100% all in. It's not like, well, gee, I'm going to do this as long as it feels good for me, and because that's what happens. Because it's never about a feeling. It's about a commitment. It's about what I said before God Almighty. It's about what I committed to Him, and it's about what I committed to my children. And you know what? In marriage, I found out in my broken person that I am madly in love with my husband, but I didn't possess love for a lifetime apart from God for him. I really didn't. And that was a scary day for me because I loved him, but it's a lot of work and it's a lot of dying to yourself. Not just like last week, like every single day, and because I want to live well, and I want to, and the other thing I'm going for is I'm going to heaven. So my goal is not just on the permanency of us and our children. My goal is heaven, and Jim's going to get me to heaven, and I hope and pray to dear God I'm going to get Jim to heaven. I mean, but that's the beautiful part about the journey, where not only are we working out your passion and your feelings and your intellect, but you're working out your spirituality.
We're comprehensively in.
They ain't no backing out,
Mm.
Well, here we go. We got a phone call from Patricia. Patricia, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy, and you're from New Jersey, which we kind of like New Jersey, and Sherif went to school there. Your question or comment for Sherif?
Well, my comment is I teach in a college in New Jersey, and we had workshops the other day, and we had a psychology professor, PhD, tell us about controversial topics in the classroom. So he mentioned that now, it's been written up in psychological journals, teenagers are now having sex with female to female, male to male, not because they're gay, but because this is the trend in high schools in the United States to see if, gee, that's a good lifestyle. I think I would prefer that than to go with a man, opposite of myself, of course, or if I'm a male, to go with a female. I like what I tried. So now, how do you possibly bring up your children to even want a male and female relationship when now we're fighting the culture which says not only can we have premarital sex in high school, why don't we try it with our own sex to see how it feels?
Sure. Well, a couple things. I think you have to be firm about your principles from the beginning, but you also have to always frame them with the good that those principles serve. You have to motivate. It's not just a grab bag of rules, like we said earlier. There's a point to all of this. So make it vivid to your kids what the end goal is. A thriving, flourishing marriage life where, no matter what kind of early sexual experiences you're talking about, when people engage in that before marriage, they make it harder for themselves to live out this beautiful thing at the end of the journey. So that's one really important thing. I think the other thing is, one of the most powerful things with people my age and younger on these set of issues is a fear of loneliness. We have to understand what's motivating people. It's not just malice. It's not just they want to destroy the family. There are real concerns, and one is loneliness. And that's partly because in our culture today, the idea is you either have a sexual relationship, and then you can be really close to someone, or you're just lonely. You're just consigned to solitude. We have to get over that dichotomy, and one of the best ways to do it is within the church. I mean, we are supposed to have the deepest form of communion possible, which is being one in one body of Christ. And we have to show them by example and by pointing to other examples of how people can be really close, can find fulfillment, can find companionship. You have someone who knows what time their plane is supposed to land, who's the one that people go to and they say, so-and-so's really acting not himself, not herself. You're their best friend, you're their companion in so many ways. What's going on? I mean, we have to show them that kind of thing is possible without a sexual relationship. And that's just not something people can understand.
But in our society, and you just see it with the way this world is going, the social media has brought such a great breakdown for us to have a conversation, because nobody has a conversation. If I have a thought for you, I'm going to text it to you. I'm not going to go eyeball to eyeball with you. And and that's how we're sharing. So we're not establishing relationships. And at the pregnancy medical center that we work at, people are out there having sex. I have clients that have had 24 partners by the time they're 20, and they belong to nobody, and they don't feel good about themselves, because sex apart from the emotional and the spiritual, it's called usury, and then how that devalues them, and that's really where the culture is.
Yeah, in speaking with these women that come to us in crisis pregnancies, and they're often alone. The guy's not around there, and sometimes it's a sober enough situation to speak again. Sometimes I get to share with them, and I speak about, as it's said in some of the marital forms, it's really supposed to be that the man would say to you with his lips and lives in the context of an institution, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until we're parted by death. This is my solemn vow. And then we get to express this in terms of this conjugal relationship and physical relationship, but you deserve this. And it's really a novel kind of idea. So do you want that? See, they really do want that, because they may have had 24, 40, 50, 70, and it's still loneliness.
Absolutely. I actually think that your work in terms of helping women in difficult pregnancies is closely related to this stuff. Because in both cases, in the marriage fight and in the fight for life, the questions on the table are we going to prioritize the needs of kids or the desires and fulfillment of adults? And it turns out that when you prioritize the second, you don't get either.
Right.
Kids are hurt as a side effect from unplanned pregnancies, from abortions, from growing up without their mom and dad in a committed bond, but also the parents themselves. The women often end up feeling very used. Men and women end up with a kind of brokenness from not having the stability and the value of self-gift, of self-sacrifice, as you were saying.
And so emotionally wounded, so that when maybe like in New Jersey, like what Patricia said, teenagers are trying this and they're trying same sex just to see if that's going to work for them later on in life. But then by the time, let's say, they have the great self-discovery at the age of 24 and they get it, like, oh gee, my parents were right all along and the church was right, but all that damage that got done, all the consequences that they had to bear, all the brokenness emotionally and physically, because everything happens physically to us, not just, you know, I mean, everything happens in our bodies and in our spirits. I mean, we present ourselves as such a mess, you know, and only God and only the church can restore those souls and lives. Okay, we have Mary from Minnesota. Mary, welcome to At Home with Jim and Joy. Your question or your comment for Sherif?
My question is, Sherif was talking about how marriage is total self-giving and resulting in a child, and that's what I believe, and that's so beautiful and true. But I have relatives who will argue, what about people who can't have children or people who adopt children? How can I explain to them that that's still part of God's plan and that doesn't take away from what true marriage is?
Good question.
Great. So we can look at it from, again, the personal and the political. From the political view, from the state's point of view, it's true that not every marriage produces a child, but every kid has a mom and a dad. And when you recognize an infertile couple's relationship, even if it's visible that they're infertile, they're past a certain age or whatever, you still aren't detracting from the idea that marriage is the context for kids and that every kid should get their mom or dad. So that's, and they still model the values of family life in a way that still affects the culture.
And when you share that with people, are you finding that it's kind of like they never put the child in the equation? Even maybe people who are homosexual couples or whatever, and they start thinking about the child. Do they see it?
I think that this is a big problem, is that we haven't, as a culture, been focusing on the child. But I think it's not something that started with the same-sex marriage debate. It really started much earlier. I mean, this isn't something where we can scapegoat any particular population. We're all responsible for a vision of marriage and family life that focuses on our own personal fulfillment. It's 40 years of that brought us to this particular debate, not the other way around.
It's adult-centered, it's about me.
Absolutely. But then the second thing is, look, okay, what about the personal? What if a couple is infertile, are you saying their marriage counts for less? Absolutely not, and here's why. An infertile couple, just like a fertile couple on their wedding night or a year before the first kid comes around or after the last one leaves for college, still has a comprehensive union, a total union of heart, mind, and body. They're still coordinated towards a single bodily end of the whole they make up. It's still one flesh in the way that the parts of me are one flesh. And that has value in itself, that total self-gift, even apart from the value that it has for kids. It's just that the value to kids is what gets the state involved.
And they're set up perfectly for adoption.
Absolutely.
They made themselves permanent, irreplaceable. Speak to that in terms of the child they would adopt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've created a kind of context in which adoption can happen, can serve the needs of the child to have a mom, to have a dad, to have the values of commitment, so that adoption from that perspective is on a par with parenting. It's not some sort of, I mean, it arises when some other difficulty comes up first, but it's real parenting because they've created a marital bond.
Well, and you know, we had dearly beloved friends who were, they were infertile, but what they did, they didn't adopt other children, but they spiritually adopted our children and our family. I mean, and to this day, you know, they're like grandparents to them. They were infertile, and our children looked to them and loved them, and they nurtured, and they, you know, they discipled and they mentored, and they also set a great example of what a married couple was to them right before their eyes.
Absolutely. So they can model the values of marriage for the public, and again, that still has public benefits. The other thing is, this is something also that single people can be called to. I mean, we can't forget about the people who will not get married for whatever reason, whether it's because of exclusive and enduring same-sex attractions or any other consideration. Maybe they have to take care of an ailing parent, they can't make that commitment. They can still be of real service. They have vocations that are irreplaceable. Christ needs something from them that no one else can do for the world.
Sherif, thank you so much for being with us and bearing witness to the world regarding the sanctity of marriage. It's What is Marriage? Man and Woman, a Defense. You can go to EWTNRC.com and you can just Google a search Sherif there at Girgis and see him debating at various institutions and making the case for marriage and family. We're going to take a break at this point. We'll be right back. Don't go away. You're at home with Jim and Joy. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Well, right now we have Father John Paul with us, and we're delighted to have him on our set. But first, we're going to go to Joan, who is in Rome, and hear the wonderful words that she has for us. Joan?
Greetings from Rome, the new windy city, taking the place of Chicago. Anyway, it's been a very historic and big week here at the Vatican, and we have to look particularly at Sunday. Sunday, of course, marked the Ascension, the 49th World Day of Social Communications, and also the canonization in St. Peter's Square by Pope Francis of 4 19th century nuns, 2 of whom were Palestinians. So, and this only followed by a few days the Vatican, the Holy See, officially recognizing the state of Palestine. Now, Sunday was a big event, huge number of faithful from the Middle East, from Jordan, Palestine, from Israel, and many church leaders. Patriarch Fuad Twal, the Latin Patriarch, was here, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of Palestine, and Vera Baboun. She's the mayor, the Christian mayor of Bethlehem. Now, the exciting thing about these women saints is that they are the first saints of the Holy Land since the early days of Christianity. Amazing. And here's what the Pope said of these 2 new saints. Inspired by their example of mercy, charity, and reconciliation, may the Christians of these lands look with hope to the future and following the path of solidarity and fraternal coexistence. So a really big day Sunday. But there was another aspect to Sunday too. Sunday marks the World Day of Social Communications, and Pope Francis this year dedicated the message to the theme of communicating the family, a privileged place of encounter with the gift of love. And here's what he wrote in his message for that day. It's in the context of the family that we first learn how to communicate. In the family, we learn to embrace and support one another, to discern the meaning of facial expressions and moments of silence, to laugh and to cry together with people who did not choose one another, but who are so important for one another. And he said, a perfect family doesn't exist, but let's learn how to deal with imperfections in a way of working constructively together. So lots to say on this, but we're out of time, so back to you, Jim and Joy.
Thank you so much, Joan. Well, Father, wonderful time with
Some
Sherif.
great words from
Joan sharing there.
Yeah.
Your thoughts.
It's good to be here.
Good
Thank
to
you.
see you yet again.
Yeah, we missed you last week.
I know I was one sick little girl.
But we tried. I pinch hit for you.
You did good. I was just glad he didn't kiss you or hold your hand or something like that.
No, that won't happen, I promise.
But it was your birthday. He could have kissed you, whatever.
No.
He's Italian.
Yeah, it's your excuse, right? Sherif did a great job
Yes.
on the first part of the show. And just to encourage people, to pick up this book that's available. And I think that for people to buy this book for their pastors, because knowledge, is so important.
True
We need to be educated. We need to know what the arguments are, not just on both sides theologically, but from natural law, from reason. And we can see that this is a reasonable argument. It's not just theological, obviously, but it's rooted in nature.
And the book doesn't speak over your head, even though Sherif is a Princeton, Oxford guy.
You do a great job.
This is really practical. And I think there's been kind of surveys, and they're asking Catholic people, Christian people, what is marriage? They can't even say what marriage is. And so this will tell you what marriage is and how to articulate when those arguments come up, and especially with those that we love, and how to speak the truth in love.
Sure. One of the things that Joan said that the Holy Father addressed about communication, how important is communication in marriage, just in general. I mean, not just in marriage, but just to be a good, abiding human being in society, in culture, in the family, in religious life, to learn how to communicate. And you're seeing nowadays, I've seen this as a priest, especially not just in young people, but even in people, my age, or I'm close to 40, and in their 50s, the digital age is kind of creeping in, and we're communicating more and less, less to people. I'm thinking of this one time I was in the restaurant, and I saw this beautiful family come in. I believe they had 2 or 3 kids, and they sit down at the table, and the husband and wife are on one side, the kids are on the other, and the kids are in kind of la-la land. They're not talking to their parents. The parents really aren't talking to one another. They're just kind of looking off into space. The son has his smartphone, and he's beneath the table like this, like he's hiding.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, and he's right in front of his father, and the father was not engaging at all with his son, not talking at all. And I just felt like getting up from the table and saying, Dad, you know, talk to your son. You know, he needs you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I see. It's so important for, you know, communication, and that's where it's learned, like the Holy Father said, in the family, and that's, you know, and your thoughts might be, you know, go in this. I mean, as grandparents too, you know, you can help bring that into a family. You know, the Holy Father has mentioned so much about the importance of grandparents. I don't know how many countless times have I mentioned that on this show. The importance of that my grandparents were in my life, helping to form me.
Right.
You know, both sides of grandparents helping to form me into, you know, the man that, you know, I've become, you know, the priest that I've become.
Yeah, we took out one of our grandchildren to eat in preparation for her first communion, and she was saying, you know, Babo, that's what they call me, Babo, and Nona, it's like Papa and Nona. She said, I had to do a report on family, you know, and I put in it that I'm so grateful for my grandparents. She has 2 sets of grandparents.
Good.
Because they help you to know that you're loved.
See?
So we want to
Isn't that
say
good?
to grandparents, we want to say to seniors, we want to say to the elderly, you have a very important place. And I love what the Holy Father said. He said the family is the first encounter with love.
Yeah. You know, John Paul II said, you know, very clearly, you know, I think this was in one of his first encyclicals. First of all, he spoke so eloquently about human love. You know, he said, man cannot live without love. He remains a being that is incomprehensible to himself if love is not revealed to him, if he doesn't encounter love. Now, first of all, this is our encounter with God, who is love. But at the same time, encountering love in the context of the family, and not just the mom and dad,
Right.
you know, but the greater family, the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, the extension. I mean, that's all family.
Well, and the beautiful thing is that, you know, and the Holy Father shared this, the place where we belong. I mean, I can remember, I have 7 brothers and sisters. I can remember growing up on the streets in New Jersey and, you know, outside playing all day. And when you come in, it was like, they know me, you know, and you could run out from the world that was out there. Maybe you got in a fight or you were doing something crazy, but you ran in and it was a safe place.
Safe.
And Mom was going to tell me who I was, you know, and they would patch up your wounds and tell you, and my mother literally would say this, pull up your socks, dry your eyes, and get back out there, you know, but that's
like my
it,
mom,
right?
my dad, yep.
Father, we like to close with your blessing.
Sure. Family, may the Lord bless you and keep you. And may he turn his face to you and be merciful to you. May he show you his kindness and give you his peace. And may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit descend upon you and remain with you forever. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Father. Well, what a beautiful time we've had together. You're an important part of the family. You're always at home with EWTN and with Jim and Joy. Let us all together build a new culture of life, marriage, and the family. Keep it on EWTN. God bless you. Bye now.